God bless you and welcome to Sunday Night Live. I am Bishop Jerry Maynard, and I'm glad that you join me each Sunday at 6 o'clock. It is a tremendous day in the Lord because great opportunities are afforded us. And although sometimes we talk about challenges, we have learned to substitute the word challenge for that of opportunities. I think Covey told us about that. And so we talk about opportunities today, and we have many, many, many opportunities today. As we look at our church, as we look at our communities, and as we look at people who God has given the ability to address particular issues, whether they be in church or within the community. And we have such a person with us tonight that I'm glad to have her with us. And I have reference right now to Veronica Conley, who is my special guest tonight, and she's going to be talking to us about many things, and we're going to just share tonight, and so it's going to be well worth your while to listen. And as a matter of fact, you might want to get a hold of some people so that they can enjoy what's going on tonight in our discussion. Share with them, and I tell you, it's going to be well worth their while. Well, Veronica, it is really good to see you and have you with us tonight, and I am sure that God has been good to you, and you've done a lot of things in preparing yourself so that you can address yourself to the many needs, not only of yours, but needs of other people. And so to that extent, I want you to tell the people about yourself.
Well, thank you, Bishop, for the introduction. And my name is Veronica Conley. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Tennessee. And I'm also an author of the book Back to Me. And I've also recently launched my first business. And it is called the Dior Movement. And we deal with mental health care as well as self-care for the individual, for the couple, and for the whole family.
Well, praise God. So you have a book, Back to Me. You involve yourself, addressing yourself to mental disorder,
Yes.
mental illness, and you just involved all around because of humanity.
Yes.
I say to people all the time, there are those of us who have been called into what I consider to be the word ministry. We're preachers, we preach the word, and we pastor, of course, and we do other things, but we preach the word. There are many people who have been called into other ministries,
Right.
and what you're involved in my opinion, is a ministry.
Yes. And I'm very glad that you said that, because usually when I'm working with my clients, some of my parents or other clients of mine will ask me, what if something feels different about when I'm working with you, what is the difference? I said, well, for me, it's not a career that I'm in, it's more like a healing ministry. I said, I really feel like I've been called into a healing ministry, and the way I heal is to help you mentally, emotionally, and physically be able to reconnect and realign yourself so that you can live in the abundant life that Christ came for us to have.
Well, I'm thinking about that, and there are people today, because of the coronavirus, because of the racial discomforts that are
Right.
going on presently, and then the economic problems that we are experiencing. And then for Middle Tennessee, the tornado that took
Right.
place. So a lot of this is going on, and as you see it and see where people are, how do you feel the church should respond? Because, a lot of people say, we're going to lay hands on them and they're going to be all right. So how do we address ourselves in that from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, definitely because I'm a woman of faith, and I believe that that is the cornerstone of everything that we need to involve ourselves in and how we respond. So right now, we're dealing with is when you think about Middle Tennessee, you're definitely thinking of the fact that they were hit with the tornado first.
Yes.
And then a week and a half after, we were shut down with the coronavirus.
Yes.
And then now everything that was going on racially, so it's almost like back to back to back. So at this point, they're in an area of really dealing with trauma at this point. We have heightened it to a different mental health condition that's acute, that's going to affect them long after things start piecing back together. And so as far as the church responding to that, before in the past, if a tornado hit, the church community would go in, help clean up and get them, some kind of relief. But their reach has to be mindful at this point because they don't want to put themselves in a position where they're harmed. So for me, it goes beyond, we definitely want to pray, right? But it goes beyond just simply praying. We want to be able to have empathy, actually make connections with various people, making sure that they have a support system, because a lot of times we lack the support to know that I don't really need finances from you right now. I just need someone to talk to. I need someone to go to. I need someone that can pour into me because mentally I'm starting to deteriorate. Mentally I'm starting to feel very discouraged and I'm going down. And I just need someone to kind of virtually wrap their arms around me and pour into me and just have time for me, emotionally connect with me, because the last thing we want is to go through something as traumatic as we're going through and not be able to reach anyone, not be able to feel like we're connected to anyone, because now we're going to start dealing in isolation and loneliness, and then all kind of like a floodgate of things will start coming in at that point, and we don't want to give the devil any room.
Yes. And you know one thing, coronavirus, tornado, impacted everyone.
Yes.
It did it without discrimination.
Correct.
And so what you're talking about addresses the inner person and not the exterior of man.
Yes.
So how do we get people to understand that you're not the only one going through this ordeal? There are others, but the principles that we use are the same to free you from whatever it is you're going through.
So as a way to kind of help connect with them eternally, it's more of we really have to start becoming transparent.
Okay.
And so there are times when we feel that, oh, you're strong, you got this, you'll get through it, just, just think about it, or just pray your way through it, or just do these simple things, when at the same time, each person is different. Everybody's cut different on how they're going to go through something. But if you remember a point of time, whenever that was, when you were struggling with something, when you were going through something, what is it that you had need of? What is it that you were going through? What was it that you were struggling with that you wish someone had stepped in and did this thing, or wish they had stepped in and did that thing? And then that may be the very thing that okay, that's what I can give, or that's how I can help. I definitely feel like encouraging them to seek out therapy that we've not always been so open to before, especially within our community, is necessary to encourage them to say, you know what, this is a good time to start working on yourself mentally and emotionally, because a lot of people, they already were dealing with a lot of emotional things and were already dealing with a lot of mental disorders prior to this happening. And all it did was exacerbate all of those things, because now they're shut in and having to deal with it instead of having the freedom to go to work and go do things and partake in things to kind of escape those things that were going on. Now they have to face them. And then on top of that, you have sickness and illness coming close within your family, and or deaths, or your home was destroyed through the tornado and now you're trying to deal with homelessness and all of these things. So reaching out to someone the way that they can feel like there's someone that cares, someone that is trying to understand them, and someone that is trying to help them figure this thing out and pick up the pieces and know that it's going to take time, but also at the same time encouraging that mental health and emotional health, being whole in those areas, we have to tap into that at this point. Because if we don't, in the midst of what's going on, I can only see that getting worse and being heightened in people, where it's going to cause even more damage than what they feel like they may have already been experiencing.
Sure. When I was a youngster, there was a kind of a soap powder that came out, and it was called Shout. And so people in the church took it up and said, if you're having problems, shout it out. And everybody's talking about shout. There are certain things you cannot shout out, emotional things that you cannot shout out. And so although the church is good for making people feel better for the moment often, when they leave the service, they go out on the parking lot, and all of the things that they were experiencing negatively before they came to church, now here they come back.
Right.
And so we have to work more toward utilizing the ability and the information and knowledge that God has given to people like yourself to address the real need that's there.
Correct.
Because you cannot just do a dance and a scream and a holler and feel that all things are well.
Right.
So your responsibility is to make sure that you utilize the gifting that God has given to you, and then also encourage us as pastors to understand that we need to work together.
True.
And not apart.
True. I wholeheartedly believe with that. I believe that it is important, and it's, to me, the reason why I chose a certain school that I went to get my degree. I feel like you can't separate spirituality and counseling, because he was a mighty counselor.
Yes.
So how can you think that you're going to separate the two? And in order to help the church, you need to work with the pastor, you need to work with the shepherd of that church on how they can get more in tune with their flock. Because like you said, you can preach a good message and it hit real good and you rode around the room. I know I've done it a few times. However, when I get home, did that message resonate? And then did I feel vulnerable enough to talk to you after service about what was going on with me, so that you can start dealing with the soul of me, to really start dealing with what's going on inside of me? You may know I'm having this situation because you can see it, or I may have spoken on it, but what are some things that you can tell me on how to process it? And so it really isn't that hard to make that connection between the therapist or the counselor and the pastor of a church. It just really takes a conversation of, how can I meet the needs of my people? Okay, well, just providing those services in the church where it's, confidential, because therapy is confidential. And so we want to make sure that if it's provided, they feel like that's going to stay within that conversation between them and they can help in that manner. But then the pastor can definitely ask these questions and be able to get into the thought process of, what's going on with you? How are you handling your day-to-day? How are you taking care of yourself day-to-day, so that whatever you're going through, you're not skirting around it or you're not paying attention to it, that you're actually dealing with it, and what those techniques look like. And teaching those techniques wouldn't be that hard, because some of them are basic. And then otherwise, of course, you would just refer them to the therapist so they can get deeper into it. And that's why I also agree with pastoral counseling, because I feel it's more than just premarital counseling.
Sure.
It's definitely to really pastor your flock.
Sure. One of the things and one of the scriptures that's often used is that the lunatic, that when Jesus went to the island, there was the lunatic, and he was cutting himself, and he was jumping in and out of fire and all that kind of stuff. Well, see, people are not jumping in and out of fire today for the most part, and they're not cutting themselves up a lot like that one. So I guess the point I'm saying is there are people who are experiencing problems mentally,
Yes.
and so you have to address that. Jesus cast the legion of devils out of that person, and so we should not equate altogether where we are today with that particular scripture, although that scripture is certainly paramount, and we need to take it into consideration, because some things can happen.
Yes.
People get shot and all the other kind of stuff today. But at the same time, I think that we need to know that there's certain graduation, and address ourselves to that. Now, one of the things that you spoke about was people taking care of themselves, and I want to address that a little bit, because you are a giver. I'm giving of myself. I'm doing this for you, and I'm doing that for you. Pastors do it, members do it, and you wrote a book called Back to Me.
Yes.
And I want to see what inspired you with regard to that book, Back to Me.
When I wrote this book, obviously I was on the other side of through. So what was going on was I was dealing with my own going through process. I had some mental things that was going on that had me in a very dark place. Emotionally, I was starting to become completely unglued. Physically, I was getting diagnosis after diagnosis because of what boiled down to the amount of stress that I was under. I had no idea that stress could do that to you.
Yes.
And when I would have to go through all those MRIs and at least 2 or 3 a year, and the doctor visit after doctor visit, they started teaching me how to read what was happening. And as I started decreasing my stress, I saw it reflect in my brain. And then I started seeing it reflect in how I was handling myself and what I was doing. And I realized, okay, there's a connection here. So I spent some time and I was like, God, how do I get myself out of this? What do I need to do? And he literally, things started unfolding to me. And at the end of it, it became quite clear that it was more than just going to see a therapist or more than just changing my diet. He was teaching me a holistic approach to getting back to the woman he called me to be. And that's why I was called Back to Me, because I want everyone to get back to that place where they know I am doing what God called me here to do. I started doing that. I was started in that place, but then life started happening and I started bending to life instead of making life bend to my God. And I started going to a place. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to go back to that place. I want to make sure no one else goes back to that place. So what do I need to do to get the information out so that they can help too? So when I wrote it, I broke it down just as I lived it. So it's like a mental chapter, an emotional chapter, a spiritual chapter, and a physical chapter. What do you have to do to start breaking apart and pulling up those things that kind of started weighing on you that you didn't even realize was starting to get to you? Because we can wear so many hats that we don't realize that's a stressor. We're getting pulled in a lot of different directions all the time, always giving and taking care of everyone else and meeting everyone else's needs. And then when at the end of the day, we have nothing left to give ourselves. And you can keep pouring and pouring and pouring before you realize your pot is empty. And now you're having a mental breakdown, you're depressed or emotionally drained. And that's kind of where this book definitely came out of that place.
Yes. And listen to what you said in terms of most of the time that we are into a predicament of which you just spoke, it's because we are thinking of how others project us to be.
Yes.
And we often allow others to develop and or create our character.
True.
Rather than for us to do it ourselves. And the pain of it is that you can never measure up to what others expect out of you and project you to be. Because as soon as you reach a certain level, you will find that they have yet another level for you
Very true.
to reach. And so you have to deal with, and I like the book title, you have to deal with the me.
Yes.
And get back to me. Why did God call me? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And so I was just looking here at some of the things that you talk about: the physical self-care, the mental self-care, and the emotional self-care. And some of the things that you were suggesting that we do, and sometimes we don't take them or measure them with the importance that we should. For example, you mentioned it early on, food, eating 3 times a day.
Yes.
And the 3 times a day doesn't mean the 3 snacks that you
Yes.
your potato chips and,
Right.
and pop and candy bars, but solid breakfast food, lunch, and dinner, and then being careful as to what you choose to eat at that time.
Yes.
And you spoke about even fried foods.
Yes.
And so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the food, and then let's couple that with, in terms of the exercise that you need to have, and then the rest that you need to have. I think that you indicate anywhere from 6 to 8 hours that you need to, and then you need to exercise as well. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So when I first started on the train of getting back to me, that was kind of the area where I tackled first. Because at that time I was diagnosed with diabetes, and then MS came soon after. And it was a lot of habits that I had accustomed myself to over the years that I had to break. And the first thing that happened was I was rejecting changing those eating habits. And so a lot of people sometimes will say, well, I can't do that, or I can't afford it. Eating healthy is too much. But it's a mindset. It really was. At that point in time, it was like life or death for me. So the mindset was very clear. I choose life, and so what I need to choose life. And so changing your habits of eating, actually, after you make that determination, why am I doing this? What am I doing it for? Am I doing it to fit into an outfit, or am I doing it to have life so I can live? Then it becomes, okay, then what can I eat? Well, if you incorporate vegetables regularly and learn how to be creative, which is what I take the spin off of COVID from, is that you were forced not to make more meals at home because you couldn't go out, and you had to be creative because you don't want to have a $200 to $300 grocery bill at the end of every, week. You have to start being creative with your dishes, and so that way you won't get bored with eating broccoli every day for lunch and carrots every day for dinner. No, you can have fun with it and start sauteing different meals and having different compilations pulled together. But most importantly, making sure that whatever you do eat is at least breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And even when you do breakfast, you don't want it to be carb heavy, because that gets you sluggish and you're not ready to actually go out and start your day. And, carbs can be anything, even if you're thinking, well, a bowl of cereal, that's not the best way to start your day, because now you're on a sugar high and you're going to crash. So eating protein, which is why eggs are good, and different peppers and kale and things like that. And that's why I had to start incorporating. And then lunch, doing something light, but still protein, so that you can still have the energy you need throughout the day. I wouldn't suggest, which I had to learn, not doing something heavy for dinner.
Yeah.
Because you're getting ready to go to sleep. You're getting ready to lay down. You don't want to lay down on your pounds. So that I had to unlearn, because you want to get a heavy meal. It's like, okay, this dinner's going to be great. But as soon as you eat, you're going right to sleep. And so you don't give your body a chance to digest anything that you've just consumed, and now that's how you're adding the pounds, and that's how you're adding everything on. And snacking, you can have snacks, fruits, vegetables, just don't snack a lot on fried food. Sometimes we'll say, French fries or a burger as a snack, because it's in between my two meals. Well, you just had a meal, really.
Right.
And not one of the best, because all that grease, and we know how, clogging your arteries and getting all that involved, that can start weighing on you. And actually, when those things start happening, it does start creating more chemical responses in your brain as well, and it starts messing with you mentally as well, which we have a hard time when we're already depressed watching how we eat, because those are happy foods when they're really just exacerbating more of your symptoms. I've learned that the food that I eat and how much water I'm drinking and the amount of sleep that I take in does contribute a lot to my mental capacity, my ability to be able to get up and want to start my day. If I'm fighting depression, I have to be mindful of what I'm eating, how much I'm sleeping, and the water that I'm drinking. Because if I'm trying to actually fight depression, I can't give into it by the certain foods that's going to keep me weighted, or not drinking water that's going to keep me dehydrated and start not flushing toxins out of my body that needs to be flushed out, or releasing my brain to be able to take in and consume information. So those are very critical that you don't realize until you're in something, how important that is. So I'm trying to do the proactive approach for most people, letting them know beforehand so that they won't have to be reactive because they're in illness or all kinds of things. And you were talking about the 6 to 8 hours of sleep. That's important mainly because when you first go to sleep, you're not all the way asleep. It takes a while for you to get into what they call deep sleep or REM sleep, where now you're pretty much knocked out cold, but that's when your body is starting to repair itself. It has to have that time to repair itself. Your body will sit you down if you keep running and running and running on 2 hours, 3 hours of sleep. It has a way of sitting you right on down. So you don't want it to force it to shut down on you, because that's what's happening. So we want to give it its a normal amount of sleep that it's supposed to have, so that the toxins can be flushed out, so our tissues can repair properly. Because when God made our body, everything that needs to repair itself through the night, all we have to do is go to sleep. And when you go to sleep, it's almost like putting your car into detailing, and then you come back in the morning to go pick it up. Okay. That's pretty much what's going to sleep and getting a good night's sleep can do for you throughout your whole body, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Well, that's good. That's very good to hear. I often hear people say, I don't eat cake with icing on it. Okay, what kind of cake do you eat? They say, I eat a pound cake. I said, have you ever thought about what you just said? A pound cake? All the ingredients. So people, in other words, you need to pay attention
Yes.
to what the ingredients are.
Yes,
And,
100%.
yeah, and if you pay attention to what the ingredients are, I think I also read where you indicated that when you do eat, make sure that there's something green that you eat at some point throughout the day, something green. Green vegetables. Many people say, "Well, I ate a potato." Well, that's not green.
That's not green. And it's starchy and it's a carb. So we're going right back into
And
it.
carrots are good, but you have to have more than carrots, right? You have
Yes.
to have something green, and I try my best to do that every day. Have some people who say to me, and I appreciate what they're saying. Sometimes, it's flattery, but nonetheless, they say you look well. Well, I changed my diet at some point in my life,
Okay.
and when I changed my diet at some point in my life, things were better. Dr. Mary T. cooks well in terms of not giving me a lot of fried food.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, she says that we don't eat fried food at our house, and I say that is true. We don't eat it at our house, but sometimes I eat it when I'm not at the house. But anyway, don't you all tell her that. But it is true. She doesn't cook fried food at all, but that helps out.
Yes.
When your diet and what you put in, and then years ago they used to say, "You are what you eat," and so I appreciate you tonight and back to me. So now you're back to Veronica.
Yes, I
You're
am.
back, and tell the audience how you feel about yourself at this point. You went through all of that, and you out here saying, "Hey, I'm a champion for the cause. I want to help some other people." Yeah.
So right now, I've been feeling very much rejuvenated, very, I guess you want to call it light-footed.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel so heavy by the world, by anything weighing down on me, by anything that I'm going through. I don't feel like I'm carrying this dark cloud anymore behind me of depression. I feel very much like the motto of our company, where you are living life abundantly.
All right.
And so that's the main thing that I want everyone to do. When he said that he came, and I mean Jesus, that he came that we may have life and that much more abundantly.
Yes.
I'm like, how can I live in that abundant life when I'm not happy, when I don't know if I'm going to live or die because of the habits that I've picked up, and mentally I'm here and there. And so working towards getting back to me, to where I'm that joyful person again. I feel beautiful, I feel loved, I feel whole and actually healthy for the first time. That is a me that I know that this is who he has called me to be. This is what he wants me to walk in. This is how I can walk into my abundant life and then show someone else how to walk into it. And then most importantly, my health completely changed.
Well, that's good. Now, let me ask you this question. How is it that a person can get this book from you?
My website. So you can go to my website and retrieve this book. It is www.diormovement.com. And that is spelled and abbreviated. So it's DIORMVMT.com.
Praise God. One of the things I read the book, and I've done some of the exercise that's in there that you ask of us to do, and I've done exercise on here, this too, and it's just good that you have been able to bring things around to where God wants them to be for you.
Yes.
And others can do that.
Yes.
And so you're going to spend a lot of time teaching, training, motivating others to do what you have done. It's not something that's a pie in the sky.
Correct.
You've done it. They can do it.
Yes.
And if they want to know how best to get it done, they can go back to me. I am certainly happy to have with us on this evening Veronica Conley, who has done a tremendous job with us relative to sharing. You can benefit from her and what she has offered to you. More importantly, you can benefit from God because she comes from a godly perspective. Remember this, that we may not be geographically in the same place, but we are where you are.